For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Alchemy of Pain, a podcast dedicated to shining a light to anybody going through a dark time. We want you to have hope. We want you to be encouraged by the stories of people that have been through some tough stuff, as a reminder that you can get through yours too. I was delighted to sort of serendipitously meet my guest today. I had tried to contract his boss to do an interview, and that's in queue. But then along the way, I met Jeff McAdam. He had just rung the bell, and we'll talk about that. He's a communications expert and a cancer survivor. And Jeff, it's great to have you here today. Tell us who you are and what you do right now professionally.
Brenda, thank you so much for having me. Glad I can be here. It's been a long 4 or 5 months. I am a communications director for a childcare tech platform, which is a lot for people to kind of wrap their head around. What is a childcare tech platform? Long story short, I'm a father with a 3 and a 2-year-old. And at one point, about 2 years ago, I was going through this really difficult challenge of trying to find childcare while juggling my work at the same time. Anybody who's ever had kids over the last 50 years probably knows that frustration and that struggle. And it just so happened I'd seen a local newspaper do a story on this new tech platform, Tutrist, and their CEO. And I said, that would make a great TV story. I'm going to pitch it as a news reporter. I was at the time, a TV reporter. And the more I heard, Alessandra, our CEO, speak, the more I said, hey, let me know if you need any help in public relations. This is a fantastic thing that you guys are onto, and it's going to help a lot of working parents. And so here I am 2 years later, couldn't be happier. And we're working to help employers build childcare employee benefits for their employees, so that their working parents can find childcare and can help pay for it with their company subsidizing part of the cost.
Talk about solving a problem. The company's name is Tutris. Can you spell that for us? Just because I know everybody's going to want to Google this now.
Right, yeah. Tetris. People have said Tetris, and I say that's a pretty good alternative, because like Tutris, they're both about fitting people together with the right situation. Tutris, Tootris, and it means tutor. And essentially, we're not only about helping parents find childcare, we're also about really developing and enhancing childcare programs. There's a lot of small, they call them family childcare homes, or FCCs. They're in-home daycares, and there's a lot of them that are out there that are hard to find, the hard to operate like a big business. And what Tutris does is, we come in with the tools and the resources to help make them grow, or make them stand out, to help make them visible to the average parent that's out there just looking for care. And so we're about supporting the childcare providers while also helping the parents kind of find them, nurturing ground for both.
Well, they couldn't have a better communications director, because you definitely nailed the elevator pitch, and we've already given value to our listeners and viewers. But I want to go to the theme of this podcast, which is the pain point that changed you forever. Now, what I've found is we're just bopping along in life, and then sometimes life just sucker punches us. And yet that turns out to be the thing that changes us forever. Is that accurate for your story?
So far it is, to be determined, I guess. As you said, I used to be a TV reporter and covered stories on people who had 1 in a million kinds of things like I have. My cancer is truly a 1 in a million, very rare kind of cancer. And so when I went to the ER back in August, I went because I thought I had some back pain, some neck pain, and it would be nice to know what exactly it is. I heard maybe it was a pinched nerve. I'd like to get us a couple of scans, get some definitive answers. Even told my wife at the time, well, I don't know that I need to go today. Get things going on. It's not that big of a deal. And yet she said, you're already on your way down. Just go. And I went in, not realizing that over the course of the next 48 hours, I was going to have to make decisions on how many vertebrae am I going to remove from my neck? And do we try to do a full surgery to get your large tumor out that we've suddenly discovered? And it's so rare. Do you even want to do anything at all? Or do you want to check yourself out of the hospital while you buy some time to find specialists wherever they may be around the country to solve those answers?
I want to just stop you there, because you were fully unprepared for this kind of news. I mean, nobody likes going to the emergency room anyhow. And you're sitting there and you're thinking about, I want to get home, and just maybe you can give me a prescription or a quick fix, or maybe I need to go to chiropractic or whatever. And then you hear this. I can only imagine that deer in the headlights moment.
Sure. I mean, looking back on it, kind of makes me laugh a little, because I'm, taking pictures of the ER with my laptop in my lap. I'm still getting these press releases where, hey guys, I'm still working. If you guys need to reach me, you can. I'll hopefully only be here for a few hours, and then I'll be out. And and you're right. I texted my wife like, hey, sorry, you're gonna have to pick up the kids from childcare, but hopefully I'll be home in time to help you put them down. And this is all while we're waiting on the results from those scans. And I really had to kind of push to get those scans. They had planned on doing test A and test B, but maybe not the scan. And I think it took about 4 or 5 hours before they could even bring me back to do the scan. So you're sitting there, this is all such a formality. They're going to give me these answers. At least I'll have peace of mind, but it's taken out my entire day. And then the interesting part about technology these days is these apps from these hospitals, these doctors' offices, they send you the results of those scans before a doctor even walks in. And so when I saw it pop up on my phone and I started reading, I immediately just started to kind of freak out. Like, what is, you found a mass, you found what is, okay, there's got to be some logical explanation. And then of course the nurse walked in and sat down, and you hear bedside manner isn't necessarily something that every doctor has. That would be the case for this particular doctor. She goes, I know that I said before I went back there that this was probably going to be nothing, but it's something and it's big. And that was the way she led with it. But I guess it was good to get that, that real jolt up front, because I think it helped me prepare over the next few hours for what was going to change in my life. They told me that I should not check out of the hospital. I should go up to the neurosurgeon floor immediately and start getting prepared for surgery to get this thing out. So when you call your wife and, when you have the young kids and you're trying to explain to her everything that's going on, it feels kind of like your world's just suddenly everything, everything is now done. And you're not exactly sure what's to come, but you're kind of adjusting on the fly.
So they gave you a choice. First of all, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, the whole reason of doing this podcast is because there might be someone out there that's reeling from a recent diagnosis. And to see you today, to hear you talk, and that in itself inspires hope. So thank you.
Yeah.
So you were faced with a decision. You could go right up to neurosurgery, or you could go home and think about it. And you chose.
Yeah, I chose to go up to neurosurgery, but I did consider, I said, well, what if I come back tomorrow? Because I can help put the kids to bed. I mean, it's not hurting me that much, but with the way insurance is these days, they say, once you check yourself out, now you got to get cleared for all these things in order to readmit yourself back in. You're in-house now. Our best suggestion for you would be to stay in-house, because you don't have to get insurance to clear anything once you're here at the ER. So, so that's kind of, in a way, we went over the next 4 days. I was there, and then I checked in on a Monday, and by Friday they were doing the surgery. It was kind of a whirlwind between Monday and Friday, because I have surgeons telling me at the San Diego hospital exactly what they suggest. And you'd like to look for a second opinion, but once you do that, getting back into a hospital is going to take some time. So I pick up the phone like a true reporter, and my wife comes down. She is also a former TV reporter. And so between the two of us, we're calling and calling and calling, trying to figure out, trying to do our due diligence, trying to do a second opinion while I'm in the bed of the hospital. And what I learned is so rare, it's 1 in a million, that there is hardly anybody who is an expert in what I got. And what was being suggested that I do at the San Diego hospital isn't necessarily what some other doctors would suggest I do, and that is to move forward with the surgery. So I was, at the end of about 2 or 3 days, I was really left in a hard place. Do I move forward with this surgery, knowing that they will not be able to get all the tumor? They can get some of it, 80%, they think, but it'll help stabilize my neck. And that is the biggest goal. And then we kick the can down the road to make decisions on the other 20%, what we can do down the road. Well, these other doctors say your first decision is your most important. So it was probably the longest 48 hours of my life, for sure. And still today, I don't know that I made the right decision, but I don't second guess it, because it does me no good. You kind of move forward, and I do feel pretty confident in the decision that we made. But people always ask me, do you feel like you made the right decision? I said, I don't even think twice about it, to be honest, because what would be the point?
You're absolutely, that's a really good tool, because I often want to provide takeaways for the audience to glean how to navigate their own stuff. And it's true, looking in your rearview mirror and saying, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that, it doesn't help your right now at all. In fact, it's a waste of energy, and that those kinds of ruminations can actually be tormenting. So one of your approaches was simply to say, okay, this is the decision I made, and let's move forward with the outcomes. By the way, what is the name of this 1 in a million thing that you have?
Yeah, so it's called the chordoma, and it's a 1 in a million. About 300 people in the United States will get it every year. And there's 3 different places you can get it. Typically, the upper part of the spine, the lower part of the spine, and then in your brain. And oddly enough, where I have it is even the most rare out of the 3. So the data and the statistics that as a journalist I look for in terms of, if we do this, what are the results? What statistically do we look at? None of that can be provided to me, because they say here are some results, but I would not read anything into it, because you're looking at data of 30 people. And so what would, that's in the scientific community, it's not reliable. So yeah.
And is there any kind of, is it a spontaneous condition? Is it genetic?
Yeah, it's something that, from what they do now, they believe that it's something you're born with. Everybody's born with these genes that unlock your spinal cord and essentially allow it to grow, as far as I know. And at some point, those genes shut off. That ignition shuts off because your spine is developed. And for most people, those genes stay out their entire life. For whatever reason, at some point in the last 5 to 10 years, they don't really know when, slow growing, this tumor that I have, but that ignition turned back on, and it started developing more material that essentially just grew off the spine and created a tumor as a result, and kind of just wrapped itself around all the vital stuff in the neck, which is the toughest place to have it, because it's really difficult to get in there and get it, because you have major arteries, you have your spinal cord, and you have risks of paralysis, you have risks of death if they cut the wrong things while they're in there. So they wanted to do more surgery, but it came with a high risk. And in the end, my wife and I, we spent 2 months traveling the country, speaking to the best doctors in the United States. And we sat in our living room in San Diego and made the decision to just move forward with radiation, which is a whole nother long story. But yeah, that's the journey we took.
I'm so glad that you had a supportive partner through this process as well. I mean, that's a gift to go through it together. So you had the initial surgery. Did they get the 80%?
Yeah. Yeah. They said confidently, at least 80%, which was good. And so they sent me home for 2 month and a half or so to recover. And you're right. Having that support of my other half, my support system around me was big. Having kids too is a real motivator, to push forward. But particularly, I can lean on my wife, not just emotionally, which is huge, but she is one of the smartest people I know, one of the most resourceful people I know, and she's a journalist. And so it was kind of cool to have her alongside me as we went, and we were given a cheat sheet by the Chordoma Foundation. There's a Chordoma Foundation, but they said, here's what you have. You have this cancer of your upper cervical spine, and here are the top 5 surgeons we think in the country that could presumably get that 20% out. You'll want to consult with them. And you also need to talk to the top 5 radiation oncologists in the country. They're going to decide what kind of radiation you need to follow up with. Whether or not you do the surgery, you will need radiation. So you'll need to consult with them as well. And so between her and I, sending the medical files to the MD Andersons in Houston, Rhode Island Hospital, Mass General in Boston, up in San Francisco. I mean, you name it, we're sending it to the Mayo Clinic. And it's not like you just send it and they get it and yay, we move on. It's 40, 50 calls to each one of these places. And it's the back and forth. Did you get the record? Oh, you didn't get that scan. How can I get this to you? And we live in Temecula, which is about an hour and a half drive from San Diego. And so I got to go down there, it seems like every day, to pick up more and more scans and send them out. So the fact that I got somebody else who I trust and is a fantastic resource, just knowledge-wise, was, incredible. My parents even said, what you two are doing as a team is unbelievable. I can't imagine anybody like myself. This is my dad speaking at 69 years old. I can't imagine somebody my age trying to figure this out on my own. Not a chance I'd be able to do it. So as tough of a situation is that I'm in, I am really blessed to have been in it with the person I was with.
And I think it's a really interesting angle to this whole story that you both had journalism backgrounds and you knew how to attack it like a journalist, like a reporter. And you needed to. And I think that's great advice for other people out there too. Put on a reporter hat. You may never have done it professionally, but being intensely curious and not being afraid to ask the questions. Oftentimes in medical situations, we can feel intimidated, but we must be our own advocates in these situations. And so what you brought to the table, you and your wife as journalists, was the audacity. And of course, your life is at stake here too. So it adds to the boldness to get to the bottom of it and get answers. So I think that's a really good takeaway for everybody as well. So after the surgery, you recovered. Go ahead, jump on in.
I was going to say, you have a good point too, because you get the feeling when having these conversations with doctors that they are used to telling you, here is what it is. And I think they quickly learned that we knew more than they are used to dealing with patients. And so it got to a point where they said, oh, well, what did that doctor tell you? And tell us, what did that doctor tell you? And you realize these doctors, while very knowledgeable and clearly intelligent, maybe don't have all the answers. And so it is helpful to kind of compare notes and let them know that you are coming from a position of knowledge as well. You're not just here to receive information. So that helps. Yeah.
So the next step you decided was radiation.
Yeah, oddly enough, after traveling the entire country, looking for these answers, we ironically, coincidentally, ended up right here in San Diego, about an hour from home, and partly because of the convenience, partly because they have one of the best. It's a proton beam radiation, which 5% of radiation is proton, the rest is photon, but proton allows for very precise attacking of the area they want to focus on. It's called pencil beam scanning. And so they knew that this little, remaining 20% that was in my neck they didn't want to expose the rest of my body to radiation rays. They wanted to put me on a bed and have this laser really pinpoint it. And so it took place over the course of 35 days. So 35 treatments. I went Monday through Friday for 7 weeks. And then finally got to the point where we finished up just a week and a half ago. So.
And I get to interview you just a week and a half after you, and then you rang the bell.
Rang the bell at the end. Yeah. And I guess I've never really, known enough about other people's situations to know for sure. But, for my particular situation, the pencil beam scanning didn't obliterate, didn't, kill my cancer to the point where it's disappeared and you won't see it in my body anymore. I'm unique in that it just stopped it in its tracks. It froze it in time. And the hope is that it stays that way for 30 years, 40 years, but it could be 20 years. It could be 10 years. And mathematically, it's a good coin flip that it could be even less than 10 years. And so while it was cool to ring that bell, because it was just nice to be done with the 35 treatments, there's a little bit bittersweet. Because to me, the analogy I've given is ringing that bell almost to me wasn't the end of my treatment. It was the beginning for potentially the final chapter and a hopefully long chapter of my life. The equivalent I give it is, if you've ever been to an indoor track meet, the final lap, when that lead runner gets over that final lap, they ring a bell so that everybody else on the track knows we're on the last lap. You better pick up the pace because this is it. And so when I rang that bell in my mind, I felt like I was hopefully pushing everything at a faster pace. Hopefully I'm here for 40 years. Plan for hope for the best, plan for the worst. So I'd like to be as, live life in the moment, never take moments for granted, go a little bit faster, do something more meaningful, pick up my pace, because I don't know how long this last lap is going to be.
That may have been one of the most beautifully phrased ways of addressing what happens in the human life when you realize how precious time is. And you don't need a cancer diagnosis to come to that realization. Maybe you lose a partner. Maybe the rug is pulled out from under you and a relationship ends. Maybe you turn a landmark age and you realize that you've got more time in your rear view than you have ahead of you. None of us are promised tomorrow, but this awakening, in a way, is a gift you would have never asked for, but it surely changes the way you approach life, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's fair to say. Yeah, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the moment, caught up in the day-to-day. Especially when you got 2 young kids. It's like, just survive till the weekend. And then you have the kids for the weekend and you're like, let's get to Monday. and it just can go like that. Or it's easy to be, even if you don't have young kids, hey, there's that vacation 2 months from now, we can look forward to, or that thing that's coming up in 3 or 4 months. And it is great to have those things to look forward to. But I think in my particular situation there, I got to a point, especially right after the diagnosis, where, I didn't want tomorrow to come because I was so grateful for today. And, picking up my 3-year-old at home and my 2-year-old, and just squeezing them without hurting them. But, just living in that moment. There's a lot of
tomorrow to come because I was so grateful for today. Drop the mic right there. So how are you feeling physically?
Good. I mean, if you would have put me to sleep 5 months ago for a long nap and had me wake up right now, I wouldn't know at this moment that anything is different. The mornings are a little bit rough though. I wake up with a sore neck because I have a missing vertebrae. And because it's only been a week and a half since the treatment, swallowing food is pretty hard still too. But over the next few weeks, that'll kind of go away. So I feel great. I'm told that over time, Potentially I could start to lose a little bit of feeling in my left arm or left hand. And I may start to feel some of the symptoms from that, that laser that shoots particles at 2/3 the speed of light into your body. It's nailing the areas right around some really sensitive nerves. And so while I don't feel it now, the question is 5 years from now, will that still be the case? So for the moment, I feel great.
The protocol moving forward, do you have to go back every so often, get things checked out?
Yeah. For the first year, it's every 3 months. And then after that, it'll be every 6 months. And then if I go 5 years and they don't see any growth, then it'll be once a year, which will be nice. Yeah.
So what would you say to someone else? Nobody watching or listening to this is going to have your particular diagnosis, but they will have a challenge because nobody gets a pass. What would you say to someone who's received some jolting news that potentially could change their life? How to approach it, or words of encouragement?
Yeah. I think for me, it was realizing when you feel in this moment where everything is out of control, it's nice to be able to, it's important to be able to sit back and understand what you can control. Because I think that helps with your mentality. Whether it's you can control the way you think, control, the way maybe it's the way you eat, the way, and when you have cancer, if I work out more, if I do this or that, does that change my outcome? Spiritually, is there anything you can control? What are the things you can control? Because it brings power back to you. And I think that's helpful. And then I think it's also really important to lean on people that are around you. I don't think I realized how many people cared about me until I was in that moment. I guess, I am kind of this outgoing, happy-go-lucky kind of guy all the time. And so I don't need help. And it's hard to take help. But in a moment like that, and people want to, if you're fortunate enough to have people around you who want to help you, whether it's family, whether it's friends, take it, because not only is it going to be good for you, it's going to be good for them. And a lot of times people don't know how they can help you. But if you can find a way to allow them to, it's something that makes everybody feel like they're in control, which is important too, especially if you have a spouse who's doing the best she can to keep it together and to help you out. Let her know how she can help out. There's empowerment in that as well.
I know there's a whole lot more people that are going to be wanting to root for you and follow you. Is there a way that we can follow you, or do you have social platforms that we can promote here? This is
Yeah.
something we all want to cheer you on about.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, sure. Anybody who wants to reach out to me, I've kept the same social media handle as I bounced around to different TV stations. It's always just been Jeff McAdam TV. That I don't have to keep changing the name. And the Chordoma Foundation, which is what I have. I have a chordoma. I hope to be able to do more work with them in the future, because while what I have is so rare. The guy who started this Chordoma Foundation 10 years ago started it because he also is like me, a young dad, and he got it too. And he is one of the more resourceful people I've ever met. And he was one that gave me the cheat sheet to begin this whole journey in the first place. Without him, I don't even know where I would have started. So I realized it's having people like that that can help help people in their times of darkness the most. So my hope is that I'll be working with them. And so if you don't reach out to me on social media, feel free to, find a way to reach out to the Chordoma Foundation. I'll be working with them over the next, months and hopefully years and years to find a way to be productive with them.
It's something we don't ask for, these things that happen to us in life, and yet they often just lead us to our purpose. And it will be interesting to see how this plays out, because I believe you're going to have many, 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 and can I add another many to that, years ahead, and your gifts to speak, to write, to encourage, to ask the right questions and uncover answers will serve many for many years to come. Any final words you'd like to give to the audience, Jeff?
You've covered so much, Brenda. I'd say it's a lot of times you hear this all the time on social media, or when people lose somebody, hug the people close to you tight. And it sounds so cliche sometimes, but I just say don't take any moment or opportunity for granted to let somebody know how you feel, whether it's a dad or a friend or somebody that you haven't said I love you to in a long time. A mom, let them know how you feel, because it can make a difference not only the way you feel but how they feel too. And I don't know, that's it's an important thing for me. Emotions are big for me.
I agree. Because life is precious.
Don't take your health for granted. Go get checked up if you need, even if you feel like, for me, I felt like something was going on with my body, and doctors kind of were eager to kick the can down the road. I went to a doctor 2 years ago for my neck, and they said they thought it was a pinched nerve, and they suggested I go get a Thai massage. And that's what I did. That's exactly what I did. And then the next 2 years went by and I did nothing else about it, until it got to a point where it's like, I got to go in and try to see if there's a scan that can get done. But I knew 2 years ago something was going on with my body. But when you're a young dad, it's easy to say it's the kids, it's the whatever, it's it's the work.
Sure, because we don't want to believe it. Look, you don't know my story, Jeff, but part of what created who I am and how I serve and show up today is because I lost my partner. And sadly, he dismissed a health problem and kept putting off going to the doctor. And I often wish that I had been more of a nagging partner, because maybe he would be here today. And so that final message is a crucial one, and I'm glad we're ending with it. Don't dismiss even the small things. Wouldn't it be delightful to discover it's nothing? But if it's something, then at least you know what you're dealing with and can take action to address it. A very good reminder. Jeff McAdam, it was a real privilege to speak with you. I feel like I've made a new friend, and I thank you for sharing your story today.
Of course. Thank you for your time, Brenda. It was great to speak with you, and hopefully I reach somebody who needs to hear it.
I think you have and will. And so for all of you tuned in, please do follow Jeff's story. And for those of you going through a dark time, I will close out this podcast as I do everyone. The butterfly, before it emerges from the chrysalis, goes through a dark time. They're in that chrysalis and they're pressing and kind of wishing someone would just open the darn thing so they could get out. But it's in that pressing that you create the strength in your wings so you can fly. So keep pressing. You're worth it. Have a great day, everyone.